Whenever there's a Nintendo Direct, there's usually one or two surprise game announcements that nobody really saw coming. And I would say one of the bigger game announcements that nobody really saw coming was Dark Souls Remastered earlier in the spring. Dark Souls Remastered was first confirmed for the Nintendo Switch during a Nintendo Direct, and a lot of people were surprised by that announcement, myself included. It was then revealed that the game would also be coming to the PS4, the Xbox One, and Steam as well, and will be launching in the month of May. Well, as May got closer and closer, it was revealed that the Nintendo Switch version of Dark Souls Remastered would be delayed. And a lot of people were concerned about that, myself included. Was there problems with bringing the game to the system? What was the holdup? Because Bandai Namco really wasn't saying much. We waited and waited and waited, and then eventually we got a concrete release date of October for Dark Souls Remastered on the Nintendo Switch. Of course, we checked out the Dark Souls Remastered beta on the channel for the Nintendo Switch, and I was pleasantly surprised. I thought the game looked pretty good and ran pretty good as well, so I had high hopes going into this game. Well, now Dark Souls Remastered is officially out on the Nintendo Switch, but has it been worth the wait? Should you have just picked up the PS4 or the Xbox One versions of the game? Is the Nintendo Switch version of the game inferior to those versions? That's what we're going to find out in today's video. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's jump into the world of Dark Souls Remastered on the Nintendo Switch.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards! Now, as far as my history with the Dark Souls series is concerned, it's nothing that I ever really got heavily invested into because I always heard these games were hard as hell. I played the original Dark Souls on the Xbox 360, but I never really accomplished much, and that was so many years ago, I don't even really remember much about the game. So I kind of went into this with like new set of eyes and, you know, just someone who never really experienced the world of Dark Souls and games like this. So when the game starts out, you basically have a character creation screen, and there's different classes that you can choose for your character. And you know, each character has different strengths, different weaknesses. I just went with the standard warrior because that seemed like a character that I could sort of get into. Now, as far as character customization is concerned, you can do some basic things, change the look of the character and whatnot, but it's really more so about the gameplay and the actual different character classes themselves instead of really customizing everything as far as looks and concerns are involved. Now, as far as the story of Dark Souls Remastered, it's a bit confusing, to be honest with you. I don't think I fully grasped everything that's going on within this game, but I hear that that's kind of the norm. Basically, you start out the game, you are a chosen undead, and you have to go to a pilgrimage to ring the bells of awakening and find out your destiny or something like that. And it's kind of interesting how the game sort of throws the story in there, because like I said, there's a few cutscenes here and there that sort of flesh out things, but for the most part, you're really just sort of scouring this land and trying to figure out things on your own. You come across different NPCs that sort of flesh out the story a little bit more as well, whether you choose to talk to them or not, and there's different characters that you'll come across in the universe as well that will ask for your help, and if you help them, you'll get a little bit more backstory. But honestly, the story of the game didn't really interest me all that much, you know, sort of a good versus evil thing, and you know, so on and so forth. Basically, there's a lot of undead people, and you start out the game and you're in a prison cell, you get out of the prison cell, and there you go. Now you're starting to fight all these creatures and things like that. One thing I really liked about the game, though, is there's really no hand holding, and usually I like some sort of direction, but this game really just sort of throws you in there and says, okay, go figure it out. Kind of like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. There's a lot of different paths that you can go down and a lot of different areas that you can traverse. And sometimes you'll get to an area and you'll just get your ass kicked and you're like, okay, well maybe this isn't the area that I'm supposed to go to quite yet. Maybe I need to level up my character, because there is a leveling up system. Now, as far as the leveling up system is concerned, you basically kill enemies in the game and you acquire souls. And the more souls you get, the more things you can do in the game. Souls are also a form of currency as well. You'll come across different merchants in the world and different weaponsmiths and things like that who can upgrade your weapons, forge new weapons, or give you items. And items are definitely very important, especially when you get into the boss battles of the game. Now, as far as the game is concerned, whenever you want to save, you have to come across a bonfire. And when you're at this bonfire, basically you could save your game and you can also level up your character based on the amount of souls you have. Now, of course, you're going to be dying a lot, so you'll be losing a lot of souls, but there are things within the world that sort of give you, you know, the ability to get those those souls back. Since you're going to be dying a lot in this game, you can actually find where you died last and reclaim some of the souls you lost. There's also items in the world that will give you more souls as well. And since souls are definitely a form of currency and how you level up, it's definitely imperative that you get as many souls as possible. Now, one thing going into Dark Souls Remastered was I was definitely very afraid that this game would just be overbearingly hard like I've heard that it is. But honestly, I didn't think it was that bad. There's definitely a very high challenge. You're definitely going to die a lot. But once you sort of figure out how things work in this game and how the characters interact with each other, you sort of figure out what you need to do. Each character that you come across that you have to battle sort of has, different tells, and they sort of do the same sort of patterns and things like that. So when you're in combat, which is very fluid, I feel, you have to sort of learn when to attack, when to defend, and when to parry, things of that nature. And you can do a lot of different things with your character. You're constantly acquiring different items and different weapons throughout the game, so you could sort of tinker with what works best for you. And of course, certain weapons and certain items work better on certain enemies. So I really like that about the game. And really, my favorite thing about Dark Souls Remastered, though, is definitely the exploration aspect of the game, because it doesn't really tell you, like I said, where to go. So finding these different nooks and crannies, finding different paths and things like that, really sort of bring the world together, because it's a very big world. But there's times where you'll find a shortcut that will allow you to access an area that maybe you've previously been to before, and maybe there's a bonfire near there. So then you could save the game and then sort of progress. I don't think it's overbearingly difficult. There's definitely a very high challenge, but I sort of attribute this more to like an old school game, more so than a game designed with just difficulty in mind, brutal difficulty in mind. It's not really like The End Is Nigh or Super Meat Boy, where like the draw of the game is the high difficulty. I feel like the draw of Dark Souls Remastered is the actual game itself, because there's a lot of things to do within this game. Another thing I like about the game is the PvP aspect of the game. So as you're playing throughout the game, your character is basically going in between a humanity state and a hollow state. If you're in a hollow state, you're pretty much one of the undead, and that'll impact how different NPCs interact with you and things you can do. But you can acquire humanity through different item drops throughout the game. So you're always kind of on the lookout for humanity and when to use this humanity. Now, as far as the PvP aspect is concerned, once you have humanity and your character is a full human, you can actually infiltrate other people's games that are in the hollow state. And then it becomes this one-on-one sort of duel. And it's really intense. It's really fun, because I feel like a lot of people don't understand what's actually going on. So whenever I infiltrate someone else's world, you actually get more items and souls by doing that, by defeating them. So there's definitely a reason to do it. So there's also a reason to keep your humanity level higher, because if your humanity goes into the hollow state, then people can infiltrate your world. So you want to avoid being in the hollow state as much as possible. And it sort of adds another layer of strategy into the game that I think a lot of people don't really realize. You can also leave messages for characters that are playing the game as well, that you can either help or hinder them. If there's a certain enemy up ahead that they probably shouldn't go, you can leave a note that says, hey, don't go that way, go this way. Or you could just screw them over and say, hey, you should probably go straight on ahead and, die. So I like that about the game. There's sort of an interactive environment with this. It almost feels a bit like Miiverse did back in the day on the Wii U, where you can leave different notes for different games and for different people to see. Now, as far as the presentation is concerned, I think it's good for the most part. It's definitely a very clean looking game. There's some low res textures here and there that I noticed, but the frame rate is a rock solid 30 when you're playing in dock mode, and I definitely feel that it maintains that ability. And I think some of the environments look really nice and lush as well. There's definitely a lot of variety in the game. You're not just in these castle-like areas. There's also big outdoor areas as well that are very lush with green environments and things like that, water environments. There's a whole bunch of different environments in the game, and there's also the huge boss characters that you come across as well that are really awe-inspiring and really, really well done. One thing about the game that I absolutely love is the sound design in this game. I actually played this game a lot using headphones when I was playing it on my monitor, capturing footage, and the sound design is so rich. Like, it's really a game that I recommend you play with headphones on, just so you can hear all the different things in the environment. Footsteps from a distance away, and how it just sort of pans when you are looking in different directions and things like that. The music in the game is very minimalistic, but I feel that it does the job. It's really just used sort of in boss battles and things like that, but it's very orchestrated. It sounds very good and very clean, but the sound design overall in the game was just very impressive. Control-wise, I feel it's very solid once you get used to it. You definitely have to sort of adjust to how you use your weapons, how you use your items, but I feel like everything is mapped very nice. I don't really like how B is the main button you use in the game when A is usually the button that you use in the game. So there were a few times when I was sort of, confused by that, and I was like, why the hell am I not doing something? Oh yeah, I have to press B instead of A, but you definitely quickly adjust to it. As far as complaints in the game are concerned, I do feel like there are some cheap deaths from time to time, and you could be progressing really far and doing really well, have a lot of souls, and there's sort of a risk and reward. You get items that will allow you to return to a bonfire, but as you're progressing through the game, you're kind of like, oh, I just want to go a little bit further, maybe there's a bonfire up ahead where I can save and level up my character, and then you'll come across an enemy who will just absolutely destroy you, and you will die, thus losing your progress and thus losing those souls, unless you want to go that same way and try to reclaim your souls. There were a few cheap deaths besides things like that here and there. Sometimes it felt like an enemy was just, on crack and just destroying me, even though it was a basic enemy that I should have taken out. But for the most part, I feel like the difficulty is pretty well balanced. And of course, like I said, there are some muddy textures here and there, but it's really nothing worth writing home about. I did play the game a bit in handheld mode for a couple hours as well, just to check that out, and once again, I was pleasantly surprised. The brightness is a bit low on the default thing, you might have to adjust that, but I thought the game still looked and played really, really well in handheld mode. I've heard of a couple people complaining about handheld mode, but I'm not really entirely sure what they're complaining about, because I thought the game was absolutely fine in handheld mode. It wasn't like it was hindering me or anything. I didn't notice any huge frame rate drops or anything like that, so I'm not quite sure where those complaints are coming from, because I had no issues whatsoever in handheld mode. I thought everything looked and played fine. I did prefer docked mode though, because this is sort of one of those big atmospheric games, but handheld mode is definitely very serviceable, it gets the job done, and I didn't run into any issues with it. So overall, I think Dark Souls Remastered is a welcome addition to the Nintendo Switch library. Let's be honest, this holiday season is a bit light, especially compared to last season when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. We have Pokemon Let's Go and Smash Brothers coming, of course, but as far as bigger third-party games, there's not really all that much going on. So I feel like Dark Souls Remastered actually fills a void on the Nintendo Switch. It's a mature experience, and it's a really well done experience. It's a fun game, very challenging, but I feel like the challenge is justified. I feel like it actually adds to the game more so than, oh, this game is just hard by design and that's why you're supposed to like it because it's very hard. No, I feel like you can actually figure out Dark Souls Remastered and have a really good time with it. The performance is very solid, the sound design is absolutely incredible. Honestly, I'm pretty happy that I waited for this version of the game. It's definitely very solid, and it's an enjoyable game as well. So let me know in the comments section down below if you plan on picking up Dark Souls Remastered, if you've already picked it up on other platforms, or if you're gonna double dip on the Switch, or if this is a game that you're just not interested in. And as always, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, and as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Later.